The title's somewhat misleading. Minneapolis has crossed the line. Protesting federal agents that are trying to hunt down and arrest child sex traffickers, sex offenders, drug lords, all illegals. And not just a quiet family that snuck in here, but the worst of the bunch. Vandalism, blocking streets, grown women with salt and pepper hair. And this goes on and on and on. Yesterday, they crossed a line again with Don Lemon, a journalist who has long had a history of being biased, unprofessional, lying on the media. They trespassed, invaded, and took over a church service in Minneapolis. Mayor Frey does not have leadership skills. Trump is telling 1,600 U.S. troops to get ready for possible deployment. First thing that should be done is Minnesota should be denied any federal funding. That's one. They should also arrest the mayor and Tim Walz for obstruction of justice. They should arrest Don Lemon as a, quote, journalist for invading a church service. Can you imagine if conservative white people invaded a mosque? Do you know the outcry would be just nonstop about that? Now, according to Minnesota, it's perfectly okay to come in. I just got a text message from my friend in Ohio that just stated that Don Lemon led this protest. Isn't that an insurrection? There is in the Constitution separation of church and state. They're claiming that the pastor, someone in the church had something to do with ICE. Well, so what? They're a church. This is Sunday. And apparently the church had a stand of standing up for the church's stance was obey the laws. And the liberals don't like that. What needs to be said about Frey and Walz and these protesters is none of them have opened their homes to any of these illegals. And I'm going to say it again with the Democrats. They slam laws down on the rest of us, but they keep that stuff far from their porches, far from their doorsteps. We saw this with Obamacare. They rammed it through. Does everybody remember what Nancy Pelosi said? Let's get this thing passed so we can see what's in it. Are you serious? You're a grown woman saying this. Let's get this thing passed so we can, full stop, see, full stop, what's in it. Didn't you read the bill? Obamacare was a national disaster. That's not just my opinion. I was married to a woman who handles insurance verification and billing and verification and all that for a major, she no longer works there, but an in-home visiting nurse organization. She said this Obamacare is a disaster. They forced Kaiser Permanente in Colorado to take on the Obamacare because nobody else wanted it. Doctors didn't want it because they weren't going to get paid for their services. And I want you to pay attention that the House and the Senate exempted themselves from Obamacare. That alone ought to tell every American this stuff was a bill of goods. Now you have Don Lemon, an African-American man, encouraging the disruption of a church service on Sunday morning. Why is he not arrested? That would be like me breaking into his house, walking into his house, and having protesters come into the living room and chanting, That's not okay. Why is it okay to go into a church? If white people had gone into a mosque and done that, I guarantee you the outcry would have been huge. What we are seeing in America is a breakdown led by the Democrats, where they're encouraging this sort of thing. And I've said it before, the Democrats are anti-God, anti-Bible, anti-Constitution, anti-Christian, anti-white male. They're even against black men that actually wake up and vote conservative. We've seen the Democrat Party has allowed persecution and harassment against us. We've seen it with Facebook, shutting us down at every turn. I finally got tired of it. And I said, no more Facebook. The day will come when my channel and others will be shut down for telling the truth. You don't think it's possible? It is. They don't want us on here. They don't want us on here at all. Paul Joseph Watson, who is not a Christian, who talks about the news, he's been demonetized over and over again on YouTube. So he goes over to other platforms, Patreon or whatever. I don't know if I got my stuff straight, but YouTube is not objective. Look at all the hatred and the things that trolls say on here that totally cross the line, and YouTube does not do a thing. I filed a complaint against a channel today based on their own policies. We'll see if they do anything about it. A personal attack. And YouTube is catch as catch can. Google is. Facebook is. We know what happened with Twitter. And everybody howled and yelled and moaned and groaned about Twitter being purchased by Elon Musk. They were persecuting and attacking people that didn't agree with the liberal Holy See. To invade a church, whether I agree with the church's stance, doctrine, teachings, is not okay. People of faith in America, that is harassment, that is trespassing. I don't care if it's a Mormon church, Jehovah's Witness, or a mosque. You don't do that. You don't do that. That crosses the line. And these protesters in Minnesota, they're being talked about. And amen, Iraq, I saw your comment, 100%. I was attacked the other day by I'm not sure what he is, but he's a boy calling himself a girl. And I was told I was ugly. Well, I don't care about that. But I think it's funny. He's complaining on his channel about the hatred towards transsexuals while he's hating on me, who wore a woman's top and is not like him, but also attacking my Christianity. And I've said this before about liberals. They have become the very thing that they protest. They complain about discrimination. They complain about, being persecuted while they're dishing it out on every level. Walking into a church led by a journalist who was canned from, somebody want to remind me what network Don Lemon was on? He was canned. He was let go. Not sure what the reasons were. And this guy's still rabble-rousing and causing problems. And I'm going to say it again. The problem with the liberals, the problem with these protesters They leave their homes, they leave their communities, and they make sure that this stuff doesn't come anywhere near their front porches. And I cannot say what I want to say on here because it would be misconstrued. But I think you know exactly what I'm getting at. It's easy for people to sit on their phones and type hatred when we don't have a picture, we don't know who you are. And what bothers me is watching some of these protests this morning. You ought to hear the colorful language and the yelling and the screaming while they're vandalizing, acting up. And you want to ask these people, what do you think you're doing? You're not bringing these illegals into your home. You're not even hanging out with them. What is the problem? How did Minneapolis become so full of crazy people? Frey says, we're not going to tolerate this intimidation. No, but you're letting people intimidate churchgoers, intimidate ICE agents. You got to be kidding, Frey. Who votes this stuff in? Who votes this stuff in? That is not leadership. I guarantee you, if this stuff surrounded the mayor's house, he'd be shaking in his boots. When the riots were going on, the mayor, the governor didn't do anything to stop it. Didn't say this will not be tolerated. Tim Walz called in the guard the other day because the protests were getting out of hand, and he did that because Trump threatened to call out an insurrection act, which is exactly what is going on. Nancy Pelosi and the others were talking about the insurrection of January 6th. My take on that is Antifa was involved in that. And I've learned something. People need to hold their cards close to their chest. When you give out the playbook to the enemy, they're ready for you. And Trump said, January 6th, we're going to go down to Washington. And the Democrats said, awesome. Let's set up our props and stages. Let's get these guys. Not one politician was threatened or had their life removed. Did you notice that? But they did shoot Ashley Babbitt. And what was she doing? Nothing. She didn't do anything that crossed any lines and she was shot. But let's talk about something that everybody in America is missing because this is what the media does. This is exactly what the media does. They did the same thing when Americans were getting tired of Paul Fauci and his draconian lockdowns and insistence on masks, shut down the schools, which, by the way, hurt kids more than anything. And I say that somewhat sheepishly. Maybe the best thing that could happen is keeping these kids out of the public schools that are teaching them activism and white hate and teaching them that all of us are racist and revisionist history, that the Pilgrims were bad, the Founding Fathers were bad. It's crazy. But what is not being caught here is even Ilhan Omar, who has no business being in any form of government in this country, screaming and yelling Renee Good. She wouldn't have cared about this woman at all if she'd have been a conservative. She doesn't care about Renee. She's just using this as a TikTok to get likes. That's all it is. And experts were saying that. Have you noticed that same woman was not standing up protesting her own people and Tim Walz funneling billions of dollars of money back into Somalia under the guise of a daycare center, and there was no daycare center? Where's her outrage on that? her own people part of a major scam. She was silent. The Democrats are not about justice. They never have been. And I see a comment, exercising your faith. I didn't get a chance to see the whole thing. It just gives me a snippet. But people should be able to go to church as long as that church is not inciting people to go out and turn everything upside down and be a danger to society. Pastors have every right to educate the congregation in the Word of God, in the principles of faith, and encourage them to obey the governing authorities of the land and honor God. Don Lemon is not a born-again Christian. None of these protesters are. They clearly are showing the fruit of their allegiance with Satan. And this is a problem in America. This stuff goes on and on. It's ridiculous. When you're busting up stuff, you're cussing and shouting and acting like a horse's patootie. I don't care what you believe. You are 100% wrong, and your actions show it. Minneapolis is out of control. These people are incorrigible, grown adults. Did they protest ICE when Obama had them rounding up people? They didn't do a thing. They did not do a thing. Do any of these protesters have illegals living in their house? Of course not. Did Ilhan Omar speak out against the travesty of her own people and Tim Walz and all that corruption with the daycare thing? No, she's silent. Every time I hear the Democrats scream out justice for so-and-so, I go, here we go again. While they smash businesses, smash cars, hurt people, throw Molotovs at police cars. Yeah, justice, huh? I wish the hand of God would come down and just bring judgment on these people. Because when God does it, it's over. There's no court date. There's no reading your rights. And I'm going to pray for that. I'm going to pray that God intervenes because of leaders like Frey and Walz. These guys actually believe their foolishness. They actually get up in the morning and think that their compass is pointed true north. That just mystifies me. You think it's okay for people to rebel, act like children, and tear things up in the streets? It is a violation of federal law to go after federal agents. And a federal judge just limited what ICE can do in Minnesota. Now, what side of the fence do you think the federal judge is on? Appointed by Democrats. And they need to start doing a litmus test for these judges. Are you going to stand up for the law, or are you going to stand up for liberal left politics? You got Australia Sky News Network, one of the best out there. I don't watch CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, NPR, MSNBC. I don't watch any of that. Huffington Post, Politico, New Yorker. These are the most liberal, swayed, biased, periodical garbage. That's it. The Washington Post, the LA Times, the New York Times. This isn't journalism. The National Enquirer is better reading than that. Don Lemon is not a journalist. He's a rabble-rouser. He's racist. He's hateful. He's never been humble. He got let go. Wasn't it NBC he was with? He got let go. And he's still out there full of his own, just like Satan. I shall be like the Most High. Don Lemon is a complete clown. He's not a journalist. Leading a rebellion of grown adults that are acting like Jezebels and spoiled little toddlers to go and disrupt the church service. Why were arrests not made for that? Why is Tim Waltz and Frey silent about that? They say we're not going to be intimidated, but you allow people of faith to be harassed. Both of those people should physically be removed from office. Minnesota needs to be made an example by the federal government that this stuff will not be tolerated. Why aren't they doing it? Let's back this bus up. Why are we still not trying to get term limits in the House and the Senate? To me, if I was president, that'd be priority day one. I'd say we're done with this stuff. We're done with career politicians. The federal government, to me, has the right, based on what's happened in Minneapolis, to arrest the mayor and Waltz and say, you're being charged with inciting rebellion and a resurrection to federal agents. Now you've got churches being invaded, trespassed against, people of faith harassed. We are not going to tolerate that in America. I'm going to say it again. If white people had stormed a mosque in America, what do you think would have been the outcry today? Oh, my word, would there be protests in Minneapolis? Those Somalis would be having a fit. Ilhan Omar would be taking a first-class flight, screaming and condemning it. The silence from the left about a church is deafening. And I've always said, my stance is I support the freedom of religion and the exercise thereof. But an amendment should have been made to the Constitution a long time ago that Islam should have never been allowed to establish anything here. And the reason is as follows. At their core, they believe in the destruction of souls and property. At their core, they will not allow the construction of a church or a Bible in their countries that they left. America should do the same thing. You want to come to the U.S.? Islam is not going to have a mosque or a center because your religion is dangerous to our way of life. Look at the Somalis. Look at what they're doing. And they beat up a conservative and mugged him yesterday in Minneapolis. Did you see that? Somalis. Good people. Good, great people. You allow people. I was reading the Daily Bread this morning talking about how we should not show partiality, and I agree. But guess who's showing partiality? Guess who's showing favoritism? And who are they showing favoritism to? Not Vietnamese, not Japanese, not Filipinos. You know, Asian people that come over here, start a business, work hard, mind their own business. Do you ever see those people protesting in the streets? You ever see them acting up? No, you don't. They get very rich. They're disciplined. They buy nice houses. They keep their yards nice and clean. They're not the problem in the neighborhood. But instead, we got the left catering to hateful, divisive, rude, in-your-face people that don't love our Constitution. They hate us. And they do this because they're trying to get votes. If this stuff was brought to the front door of all these politicians, all these protests, all this bad behavior was showing up at their house in their neighborhoods, I promise you they'd be scared. I promise you that they would do something about it. They don't care if it's in some side neighborhood in Minneapolis. They don't care about the homeowners. They don't care about the people. They don't care. I think we're living in a time where we're seeing the building up of the Roman Colosseum. The Democrats love seeing people get torn up and their lives disrupted because it doesn't touch them. Bring this stuff into their neighborhoods and watch what happens. Bring this stuff to Martha Vineyard. Can you imagine that the protesters storm Martha's Vineyard or the Hamptons or the gated communities in New England where they all hole up? Ooh, baby. Oh, my word. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if these showed up at Don Lemon's house How about all the people on The View? Surround their towers, surround their villas and vistas. I tell you what, it's funny. It's awesome when it's not touching you. And that's the problem with these liberal politicians. They rake in the money. They got police protection. They got cameras. They got gated security systems. They got fences and walls around their property while screaming about a wall down in Mexico. Maxine Waters got a big iron fence with, brick pillars, cement pillars, security system. Hey, you don't believe in walls? Take it down. These people do not model what they tell us to believe. Adolf Hitler's the same one. He ran off to his little cabin in the, Bavaria in the Alps, playing with his little Fräuleins. What a joke. Stalin and Lenin eating the best food, doing whatever they want, telling everybody communism's good for them. And now we have a communist leader in New York. People are leaving New York. They're exodusing it. Businesses are leaving California because of Gavin Newsom and his oppressive regime. And the Democratic Party has proven to us over and over again, from Whitmer to Hochul, wanting to ban gas stoves. You've got to be kidding me. They want to get everybody on electric cars, electric houses, and when they don't like you, they can go, you're in the dark. You think they won't do it? You better believe they will. In Boston, I saw this myself, their leadership down there is going to limit how many miles a car owner can drive their car. You got to be kidding me. I thought the Democrats were all about freedom. No, they're not. They're communists in disguise. They want to control you. They want to control what you say. They want to control everything. They want to destroy me and you and freedom-loving people who speak the truth. They're evil. They are of their father, the devil. And in many ways, Muslim nations are correct when they say America's the nation of Satan. Yeah, the Democrat Party is. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now you invaded a church. What's the waking world today going to say about that? Where's the stance going to be? Are other liberals going to say, whoa, 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 you've crossed the line? Nancy Pelosi? Any of those people in those big mouths, AOC, going to talk about that? No, they're silent. That's to be expected. Liberalism is a toxic cancer, and it's infecting our country. And we've seen that even though Trump's in office, this stuff isn't going away. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. So Trump himself is not the answer. And I would encourage every Christian to pray that God would move his hand against these rebellious, anti-peace people. They're not about peace. They're about mayhem and destruction. They support Satan. They support illegals coming here. They support LGBTQ. They support Gavin Newsom, who thinks it's no big deal that a man and a boy can play with each other. And I'm not talking on the playground either. This is disturbing. This is disturbing. The Democrats fixate on sexual deviancy. They fixate on mayhem. They fixate anything that Republicans stand for, they fight against. Anything. Donald Trump years ago said, it's too bad you couldn't drink bleach because bleach would kill COVID. And the Democrats took that football and ran. Oh, he told everybody to drink bleach. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. I agree with him. It's too bad you couldn't concentrate the bleach right at the COVID molecules and kill it. Bleach will kill any virus. But if you drink it, of course it's going to kill you. I'm getting tired of this stuff in Minneapolis. What is the answer? Arrest the leaders. At some point, the government's going to have to say, look, we did it in Venezuela, did we not? Why can't we do it here? Why can't the feds come down, surround the Capitol, and say, that's it. You're all out of control. Your mayor's gone. Your governor's gone. And we're going to set up a makeshift government. And we're going to call a curfew. Go home and knock it off. Grow up and act like people. This is ridiculous. We stopped a leader in Venezuela and we can't stop two clowns in Minnesota? What is wrong with our country? They allow this crap to go on and on and on. And then you wonder why your prices go up. Vandalism and destroying things costs everybody. You and I, when we go to the stores all across this land, are paying for all the banditos that stole at those stores. The Walmart CEO said a couple of years ago, I'm raising my prices due to all the theft. I am paying in an upcharge in my food because of criminals stealing. That's their answer. Punish the good people. And that's what Minnesota's doing. People can't even go to church. That's messed up. You leave a church alone. That's the last bastion. And the Democrats are running right in there now. You know, the Bible talks about an Antichrist who's coming eventually. And it says he will have no regard for women. Something to that effect. And we got this homosexual push in this country. Marriage is on the decline. White women are less likely to reproduce than these groups of people that don't like us. Have you paid attention to that? Have you paid attention to the birth rate in this country? That it's only a matter of time before the people on the left, that the left favors, they're having the highest birth rate. And that day will come when whites no more have a voice in this country. Let that sink in. See if there's affirmative action. See if it says, are you Caucasian? I applied at a Safeway in Colville, Washington. Went to their kiosk. Are you Latino or Hispanic? Asked over and over. Why? Because Safeway hires and favors hiring Latino or Hispanic. Why? Because the government gives out credits. Never mind qualifications. White people are being ganged up against and punished by the Democrat left. I'm going to say it. And what's really weird about that is the people that control the Democrat left and the media are white, elite, rich people. Nothing said about them and their privilege card, which they definitely have. And they get to cash it in every day. Democrats can trash a city, trash hotels, bust out plate glass windows, graffiti. You remember the gals that were going to a car dealership and spray painting on the windows? And, you know, I remember Minneapolis when two African-American girls with their little Mickey Mouse hairstyles and the poofs or whatever you call them, walking out with their nails done, walking over broken glass with two red Target handbaskets loaded with makeup. Oh, don't cut your feet on the broken glass, ladies. Don't want that to happen. So they're helping themselves. And guess what? All of us are paying for that. Is anybody getting outraged? Is anybody getting outraged at this stuff? We can do something about this. Well, I can't. You can't. You got too many people voting in. Frey, Waltz, Hochul, Whitmer, Gavin Newsom. These are not good leaders. They're not leadership material. I'm a working man. And I see people, I see men and women that they get their little power trip, and I'm going, these ones that want power are not the ones that should ever be in it. The people you give power to are the ones that are reluctant to take it. Look at when God called Moses. Oh, God, I can't speak. He didn't want to do this. Go back. When Moses intervened in a dispute between an Egyptian and a Hebrew, and he smote the Egyptian, he thought nobody had seen it. Then he saw two Hebrews having a disagreement, and he went to intervene, and one of them said, what, are you going to kill us like you did the Egyptian? And he fled out of fear into the wilderness. I believe he went out there, 40 years? Went out to Jethro, his father-in-law, or whatever. And he had to go through 40 years of God saying, you are not running the show, buddy. And the burning bush experience, God had to make him, bring him to the point. Moses tried to take the reins of leadership and intervene. If the Egyptian authorities had known he had killed an Egyptian, they would have taken him out. God calls leaders. Sadly, our society votes in people. It's like taking an 8-year-old kid and giving him the keys to a Ferrari, a Lamborghini. Who would do that? And we got voters handing the keys of high positions to adult toddlers. Why would you do that? It's like putting a pedophile in charge of a daycare center or a school. Why would you do that? And I don't know this Minneapolis mayor, but I've seen enough, and he makes me angry. We're not going to take this. Oh, but you're taking vandalism and people's homes and their sleep being disrupted by these protests. They're in residential neighborhoods with all this yelling and screaming, blowing their whistles and horns and tubas, and that would make me mad. It'd make me tempted to do some things and want to get revenge when I can't sleep. This stuff is so senseless. But now, we've entered a new era in American history. Churches are no longer exempt. And if they get away with this, they'll be doing this more and more and more. They'll come up to a pastor. He's speaking against homosexuality. We're not going to have that. They did that in Canada. Somebody wrote me on my channel and said, please pray for somebody. I'm in Ireland, and they fired a school teacher because he refused to call a kid a she, who's a he, and wants to be a girl. Wasn't harassing the student, said, I'm gonna call you the sex that you are. And he got fired. The school system in America is not just liberal, it's happening in Europe. That's wrong. Our Constitution says Congress shall make no laws concerning religion. They don't interfere with it. And guess what? You go to work and they're interfering with it. Then I have a conscience that if you're a man, I'm going to call you sir, not a ma'am. Oh no, you don't have the right to do that. If Bob wants to be Lucy today, you have to call him Lucy. And you talk about all this harassment stuff, we're being harassed. We're being told to violate our convictions and our conscience. Congress shall make no laws concerning it. And they're doing it in your workplace. Now these ICE protesters are going into the church, disrupting a service. That's the last bastion, folks. That's it. If they can do that, there's no stopping these clowns. No stopping them at all. And Trump had better make an example of this city. And he better start using them and say, that's it. No more. Arrest the mayor. Arrest Tim Walz. Arrest Don Lemon. And put him away for about 10, 15 years. I know he didn't murder anybody, but that's an insurrection. That is encouraging hostility to people of faith. That's on a job application about no discrimination. The Democrats, who always fought and championed for no discrimination, are discriminating against white people, men and women who are conservative, people of faith, but they're not saying a word about Islam. They're not, the same Democrats aren't protesting what Somalia's and Tim Walz did with billions of dollars. Not a word. AOC, these women on the squad are off the chain. Nothing's done. They're not silenced. They're not stopped. AOC said a list should be made about everybody who voted for Trump and they should be denied employment. She should have been physically removed from Congress. Just on that alone. We have the right to vote our conscience. She's saying we should get punished for that. She should be taken out of politics and on a no-fly list for any political office. This country was built on the exchange of ideas, beliefs, convictions. We have the right to dissent. We have the right to disagree. We do not have the right to vandalize, block streets, wake up neighborhoods, and make dangerous conditions, which is a toxic city environment. You know, what if I'm driving home from work, can't even get to my neighborhood down there? That's messed up. And these protesters, these rabble-rousers have more rights to upend everything in this country, and it needs to stop. It's ridiculous. And I'm tired of it. And this right here, this form that I'm using, YouTube is not your friend. Google is not your friend. They're an agent of this left extremism. Facebook. Nobody can say anything lewd or sexual on social media, yet Facebook has reels of underage girls dressed provocatively with no bras on, and that's okay with them. I'm telling you, folks, this stuff is real. Truth is stranger than fiction. Men are under attack. I have freely talked about. I could get a date with a man faster than I get a date with a woman in America today. I'm slender. I have a job. I own a home. You think a slender, petite woman my age is interested in me? That doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs? That's fairly well adjusted. You think that they're going to date me? Nope. Not at all. I'm not worthy enough. I never thought I'd live to see the day 2026 that we are being persecuted. We are being marginalized, shouted against, hated, patronized. And there's a parade for the clowns that support all this vandalism and protests and riots. grown adult women, my age and older, yelling and screaming about the illegals. None of them housed them in their homes. None of them. Not one. It is satanic. This is demonic. This is led by the evil one. I hope that Trump and the federal government makes an example out of this mayor and this governor of Minneapolis and says, no more. I believe our time is drawing near. I believe our country is, we're never going to be great. That's not happening. We got too many wrong-thinking Americans in this country. They're always going to fight against righteousness, always going to fight against God, always going to fight against the Bible, always going to fight against morals, always going to fight against the Constitution and decent people. They want your money, they want your house, they don't want you to have the freedom or the money or the wealth to have what they have. You will own nothing and be happy. That's not coming from conservatives, folks. That's coming from them. Promoting communism while they land grab and take everything and tax you out of existence. Can't pay your taxes, they'll own your property. And we are getting taxed without representation. Well, you vote in officials. When the majority votes in people that I didn't vote for, I'm being taxed without representation. I didn't vote for that. That's not representing me. And I think we need to have a Boston Tea Party. But how do you go about that? Anything we do, we can be arrested. Anything we do, that's bad. Look at what those Democrats are doing in Minneapolis. The last bastion is the church. And they steamrolled right in there with Don Lemon leading the procession. Make an example out of him. Arrest him. Put him in handcuffs. We arrested a Mexican president or a Venezuelan leader and his wife. Why can't we stop this stuff right here? Thank you for listening. We need to pray. 'Tis all that we can do. And I say that somewhat satirically because even I know God doesn't just jump up and say, all right, I'm going to stop these clowns. He didn't do it to Hitler. He didn't do it to Mussolini, Stalin, Lenin. And that's where people get disturbed. They say, well, if God's so good, I prayed and look at all this stuff that he allows to go on. I don't understand it either. But it all started with us. God said, don't eat of that tree, that fruit over there. And we did it. And this is what we brought on ourselves. And we all have to suffer as a result of Adam and Eve's sin. But we can say, well, if I was there, I would have done it. Really? You sure about that? I think you would have. The only thing that we can rest on is God's grace. Nothing more. He saved us. And we don't like to admit the fact that our world, our American culture is becoming splintered, factioned, racist, hateful. The Bible talks about 2 Timothy 3, know this in the last days, perilous times shall come. Men shall be lovers of their own selves, haters to those that are good, disobedient to parents, without natural affection. Look at this behavior in Minneapolis. Tell me that doesn't meet the description of the last days and the behaviors. These protesters think that they're standing up for righteousness. Look at their behavior. There's nothing godly about it. Nothing. Now they invaded a church. I demand that our leadership do something about that. Because if you don't, then you're just going to further erode the American people that leaders are a joke. We got some toddlers in Minnesota. It's time to take them to the woodshed. Get them out of office. Give them consequences for their sins. Don Lemon should be arrested and say, your freedom of speech has gone too far. This is not okay. Don Lemon needs Jesus. These protesters need Jesus. Frey and Tampon Waltz need Jesus. This is crazy. Absolutely crazy. Thank you for listening.